This week I thought it would be fun to share some budget-friendly meals that I prepared for my family this week. So I thought it would be fun to see how cheap I could feed my family of 9 without compromising on health. So I did a little math and figured out that I fed my family a week worth of dinners for under $60. So I wanted to share these meals with you. So on this first day, I am making some ham sandwiches and homemade chips for our dinner. So I'm starting off by making some homemade sandwich bread. Now I am making 2 loaves because for our family we need more than 1 loaf of bread. And one tip that I have on making your own bread to make it more cost efficient is to buy your wheat in bulk. And so I actually buy my wheat berries from Azure Standard, and then I mill them with my flour mill, and I'm just making a very simple sourdough sandwich loaf with water, some eggs, a little bit of honey, and some oil, and then obviously some flour. This is a very inexpensive way to get some healthy whole grains into your diet. Usually the most expensive part of your meal is the protein. So depending on the meat that you choose will kind of determine if you're gonna have a budget-friendly or a more expensive meal. So you'll notice in this video, I am using all of the cheaper cuts of meat. And then the reason that I chose to use ham for this first meal, and you'll see I actually use it in a couple more meals this week, and that's because this time of year, hams can be on sale because of Easter. Now, we actually already had this ham in our freezer because we raise hogs, and so we always have a lot of pork. But I did price out the hams at my local grocery store and added that into the price for this meal because I assume that most people would have to go out and purchase a ham. Now, a ham is a great cut of meat to feed a large family or even a smaller family and have a lot of leftovers. This particular ham fed my family 4 different meals. So we did ham sandwiches twice. I'm only going to show that once. And then we also made a big pot of ham and potato soup. And I also used the ham for a casserole that I made for a lunch. And I also am not showing that meal because in this video, I am just showing you a few weeknight dinners. I'm not showing you every single meal we made throughout the week. But with the ham, I was able to stretch it into several different meals. And like I said, a lot of times this time of year, you can find them on sale. So if you're trying to feed your family on a budget and you ever see something on sale, that would be a great time to stock up on that. This is especially nice if you have a deep freezer, so you can get, several hams if you see them on sale and then use them a little bit throughout the year. Everybody knows that potatoes are an inexpensive root vegetable, and so obviously you're going to see me using that here for these budget-friendly meals. Now, to make the potato a little bit healthier, I am frying it up in some lard. I am a big believer in good fats and oils, and I'm gonna top it with some real salt, and that makes it really delicious and inexpensive side to go with pretty much anything. But for today, it's gonna go along with our ham sandwiches. I am serving these sandwiches with some cheese, some homemade mayonnaise, mustard, a little bit of red onion, and tomato. Now you'll see my husband appear here in my video. I am the worst at carving pretty much any meat, and so anytime I have a big cut of meat, I pretty much always call him in to do the job of carving it, because that is definitely something that he is way better at than I am. After we finished our ham sandwiches, I had some leftover onions, so I'm going to pickle these to have for a meal that I am making tomorrow. This is something that I love to keep in the refrigerator because pickled onions are delicious with so many different things. I love to serve them with so many different meals, and they're very, very easy to make. So I just did a mixture of some water, a little bit of sugar, apple cider vinegar, and then I just pour them over top of my red onions, and I'll just stick these in the refrigerator and then they'll be ready for tomorrow. All right, so for this next meal, I am just doing ground beef and rice. Again, I'm choosing that cheaper cut of meat by doing ground beef. And we all know that rice is a very inexpensive filler for pretty much any meal. And again, to make this a little bit healthier and tastier, I'm going to fry it first in some butter and minced garlic. And then I like cooking my rice in some homemade bone broth. It makes it more nutritious and it's more delicious that way. And obviously, if you make your own homemade bone broth, that is practically free to make. I always use bone-in chicken or whole chickens when I cook, save the bones, and then I just cook it up with some water, vegetable scraps, and a little bit of spices. And that will make a really delicious and healthy to use in soups or stews or rice or just in a bunch of different meals. Now, to keep this meal even more inexpensive, you can just serve this with rice and ground beef, but to jazz it up a little bit, I am adding in some of those pickled onions, a little bit of tomatoes and feta cheese, and then I am topping it with sesame seeds and some date sauce. I am so excited to tell you guys about today's video sponsor, StoryWorth. You can ask anyone in my family. I'm obsessed with any type of photo book or personal keepsake, and StoryWorth helps families preserve their favorite stories and personalized keepsake books. Through an easy Q&A format, they enable users to share their stories, experience, and advice with loved ones, leaving a lasting memory for future generations, which is something that I absolutely love. StoryWorth is the perfect gift for holidays, birthdays, retirement, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas, really any occasion. It shows a loved one that you care about them and their stories and gives them a chance to reflect on their own lives. StoryWorth helps to capture stories in your loved one's voice and style to remember them forever, and it gives your kids a chance to know a grandparent or an older relative just as well as you did. And the best part is that it's super easy to use. I was extremely pleased with the book. It is very high quality and it will last for many years, and you can add as many photos as you want to your book, and you have the option to print the interior in color if that's something that you want to do. If you are ready to try out StoryWorth, I know you will love it as much as I do. You can scan the QR code here on the screen, or you can use the link down in my description box below to get started with StoryWorth today. for this next meal, I'm going to be making breakfast for dinner. This is something that I like to do when I don't have any plans for dinner because it comes together very quickly, and again, it's a very inexpensive meal. Now for this particular meal, I'm going to be making sourdough pancakes, so I'm getting this batter going the day before by mixing together some wheat and some sourdough starter, a little bit of water and milk, and then the next day I'm adding in a little bit more milk, some vanilla, a little bit of coconut oil, honey, and these will make some delicious pancakes. And I'm also going to be making some sausage patties and some fried eggs to go along with my breakfast. Now I know eggs have gone up in price, and it seems like that is the trend around the whole country, at least here in America, but I do still think that eggs are an inexpensive protein, even though the price of them have gone up. So now many of you guys know that we do have backyard chickens, so again, I did not have to purchase eggs at the store, but I did go ahead and get the price of eggs at my local grocery store to add in. And even after doing that, I still think that eggs are a cheap and healthy protein, and so this makes a very inexpensive dinner by doing sausage, pancakes, and eggs. Another thing that I do to save on my grocery bills, I always save all of my bacon grease, or you can render your own tallow or lard and use that. This is really important if you get your meat from a great source, because those oils and fats are very healthy for you. And so I do that, and so I can use that instead of butter or coconut oil, and that really helps to cut down on our grocery bill. So this next meal I'm sharing is ham and potato soup. Like I said, we cooked up our ham, and then I ended up cutting all of the meat off the bones, and I'm putting the bone with some water in my Instapot to make some really yummy broth. And when the bones cook for a long time in the water, you'll actually get so much more meat off of the ham. It's crazy because I feel like I had all of the meat off, but then once I was done with my broth, there was still probably like 2 cups of shredded ham that came off of the ham bone. And so that is some really good meat to put back into your soup. And then you have the delicious broth from the bone. And then I'm using bacon grease to saute up some garlic, and then adding in a bunch of potatoes. One important thing to remember when you're trying to cook on a budget is to use all the parts of the food. So don't throw away your bones, save those for broth. There's always more meat on there. Using the vegetable scraps to season things, by using whole foods in every part of the food will save you so much money on your grocery bill. Pretty soon I'll be able to start growing all of my own herbs in my garden, but because we still have some frosty mornings, I haven't been able to start my herbs quite yet. And so at the beginning of the week, I like to buy some herbs from the grocery store and just put them in a little mason jar of water, set them on my windowsill, and then I can use those herbs all throughout the week in my cooking. One way to get fresh herbs a little bit cheaper is to avoid buying the herbs that come in the small plastic packages, but to buy a bundle of the herbs. I find that the little plastic packages that you see in the produce section can sometimes be $2 or $3, and it's such a small amount. But if you go over to the section, in my store, it's right next to the lettuce and like the cabbages. And in the big bundles, those are normally less than $1. A few bundles of those, and then putting them in water will make them last a little bit longer. And then you can kind of pick off of them throughout the week for your cooking. All right, for this next meal, I'm going to be making some sloppy joes and homemade fries. This is a pretty basic meal, again, using that ground beef because it's a cheaper cut of meat. And I am making some homemade buns with whole grains. Again, that is a great way to save money. Now, I know buying regular hamburger buns from the store isn't expensive, but obviously when you're using whole grains and whole food ingredients, you're going to get all of those great health benefits. And if you are milling your own grain, it is a lot cheaper this way. Now, I actually have this recipe for these hamburger buns on my blog, and so I will link those for you guys down below. I am using yeast for these because I didn't have enough time to do sourdough, and these come together in just a couple of hours, so they're pretty quick, really delicious and fluffy even with the whole grains. So this turns a very ordinary sloppy joe meal into something that is very, very delicious. For my sloppy joes, I am browning up a bunch of ground beef. I added in some sauteed onions and garlic to that. And I like to make my own sloppy joe sauce by adding in some tomato sauce, a little bit of ketchup, mustard, a little brown sugar, and then some spices. I did garlic powder, onion powder, and some black pepper and a little bit of salt. Then I am making some homemade fries, again, frying those up in some lard to serve with this. I hope this video gave you guys some great meal inspiration. If you guys have any other favorite budget-friendly meals, be sure to let me know down in the comments below. I love whenever you guys share your meal ideas with me because it's so easy to get into a rut and end up making these same things over and over again. So I love fresh new ideas. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my video next week.